This week coming up is a historic week because as of this Tuesday, September 12th, Endeavor's acquisition of WWE will become official. And for the first time in the company's 70-year history, the first Capitol Wrestling show took place in 1953. It will no longer be owned and controlled by the McMahon family. They'll still be involved, but it will no longer be their play toy to do with what they wish. It will be merged with UFC under Endeavor in a brand new company, publicly traded, called TKO Holdings. They issued an announcement this week that said Endeavor and World Wrestling Entertainment today announced they expect to close the previously announced transaction to form TKO Group Holdings on September 12, 2023, at which time TKO will begin trading on the New York Stock Exchange under the ticker symbol TKO. And there is said to be a lot of concern among WWE and UFC employees, not so much talent and fighters, but front office employees about the layoffs that are expected once this deal officially closes. We've already heard Ari Emanuel and others talk about cost savings and synergies and eliminating redundancy, all of the buzzwords you hear with these types of mergers and acquisitions, because why have two finance departments when all you need is one? Why have two marketing departments when all you need is one? I don't expect that we're going to see mass talent layoffs, but I feel bad for the employees that are probably going to be out of a job. They've had enough of a heads up by now to where hopefully they've already given thought to what they're going to do next. It's not like they're being blindsided by this. As far as how this affects the fan experience, because I've gotten some questions over the last several months. What does this mean for us? What does this mean for the shows and creative and the fans? I don't think it does much to change anything, not in the short term. The product should largely be the same as it is every week, which if you like the product, that's a good thing. If you don't like the product, that's not such a good thing. I don't really expect any major changes in that department. The product is, the product is hot right now. Business for WWE is booming. So why make changes? It's when business stops booming that we'll really get, I think, to see how different things are going to be under an Endeavor-led WWE. How do they react to a business downturn? They're still going to be a public company, which means they're still going to be beholden to their investors, as WWE has been since the end of 1999. When it comes to spending, there's a lot of questions to consider here. When it comes to spending, does Endeavor spend big on free agents? Someone like a CM Punk, if and when he becomes one. I don't know legally what his status is right now. I'll talk about Punk later. Do they spend big to re-sign existing talents? Someone like Drew McIntyre, whose contract is set to be up around WrestleMania 40. There was a period of time a few years ago where WWE was throwing money around like they were printing it. Like they were the mint. Just to keep people like the Revival. And look, I like FTR. They're great. And they're worth whatever Tony Khan is paying them. But they were hardly big stars in WWE. And the numbers that I saw being thrown around for what they were offered to stay were insane. Because WWE did not want people going to AEW. So the wrestlers were the beneficiaries. Some of them made out like bandits to take the money and stay, which is why competition is a great thing. For the wrestlers, it's definitely a great thing. For the fans, we know it's a great thing. But that was then. Does Endeavor tighten the purse strings when it comes to talent pay? There's been a lot of complaints about fighter pay in the UFC. Does that translate to WWE? They're going to be under the same umbrella now. When their existing deal with NBC Universal for Peacock comes due, which isn't for another couple of years, do they end up moving to a model like UFC has, where you have to pay a fee for whatever streaming service, let's say the network is on, plus you pay an added fee for each monthly pay-per-view? And you go back to the days of spending $50 or $60 to watch Fastlane and Elimination Chamber, right? That would turn a lot of people off from buying those shows because they're so used to just paying $5 or $10 a month for Peacock and getting WrestleMania and everything else basically for free. If you're not a fan of these sponsored matches they've been doing, and they have branding all over the ring posts and the barricades and up on the screen like they did at Payback with the Cinnamon Toast Crunch match, I know that bothers some people. It doesn't bother WWE. They're making big money off that. Under Endeavor, we're going to start seeing a lot more of that type of stuff. Probably logos on the ring mats is next, like WCW used to do with Slim Jim. We could end up seeing sponsorships for ring attire, and how much of that money would actually go to the wrestlers. We don't know. There are a lot of questions that we don't know the answer to yet. But creatively, I don't expect to see much of a change right now in WWE programming. We know how big of a fan Ari Emanuel is of Vince McMahon. If this is largely Vince McMahon's creative vision, then he's not going to want to do anything to disrupt that until there's a business reason to do so. He said it himself. It was contingent, this deal was, on Vince McMahon being part of the package. He's effectively buying Vince McMahon. So it wouldn't make a lot of sense for him to buy the product and then start making wholesale changes to the creative that we see on television. Now, maybe we start to see more integrations with UFC talent and crossover. That I could see. But as far as the creative direction and the storylines and the bloodline and this and that, I don't see anything changing. Things like less PG and more blood, I don't really see that changing. They still have their existing agreements with sponsors and Mattel and certain promises that were made to them. And Endeavor taking over and putting WWE and UFC under the same umbrella does not mean just because UFC has blood that WWE is suddenly going to allow blading again on their shows. That's not going to happen. I think some people have these fantasies about a return to the way things used to be. But I would not be getting my hopes up for anything like that. One thing that we have heard about over the last few months is that WWE was not really signing people to new contracts or extending existing contracts until this deal was done. Right? We've heard that about a hiring freeze and stuff like that, and how much of that was true and not true. I mean, it's pretty clear there's some sort of hiring freeze, officially or unofficially, because they really haven't been signing that many new people. Although apparently they've had the Authors of Pain under contract since last year, and Carlito's under contract since June or July. I don't know what he's doing right now, but obviously he hasn't returned to TV yet. But PW Insider had a story this week. We learned that LA Knight and WWE have been negotiating a new long-term deal, believed by some sources to be as long as 5 years, and that the deal is either closing or has already closed. The ratings for his segments have been very strong. His merch numbers have been very strong. That new contract is what WWE had been waiting to lock into place before they moved ahead with the big LA Knight push. Now that he's said to be in line for a mega push. He is going to be pushed as one of, if not the top babyface on the SmackDown brand. And that makes sense to me with Jey Uso not on the show anymore. Who would the top babyface even be, if not for LA Knight? John Cena, he don't count, and he's only back temporarily. Who else would it be? It's not AJ Styles, although I think AJ could be in line for the next title match, with Roman Reigns. I think that's a match that's long overdue. But that doesn't make AJ Styles the top babyface on SmackDown. It's not him. It's not Sheamus. It's not Rey Mysterio. Just listen to the crowds. It's LA Knight. So if Knight is the top babyface on the Roman Reigns show, it's going to take some gymnastics, I think, to not have their top babyface challenging their top heel for the title at some point. I know that would disrupt their plans for Cody Rhodes. But if Knight is going to be the top face on the show, it is going to be strange for them not to do something with him and Roman Reigns at some point. We got a little tease on SmackDown Friday night. It was a backstage segment. It was a brief exchange between LA Knight, who barged in on a Paul Heyman meeting with Adam Pearce, and they had their first interaction on camera. And you could see the seeds being planted possibly for something down the road. But again, it's going to be a little weird. If he is going to be positioned as the number one babyface, whether it's 3 months, 6 months, however long it may be, how do you not have him interacting with the Bloodline and doing something with the Bloodline, who have been the dominant group on this show now for almost 3 years? Instead, it may just be when Santos Escobar and Rey Mysterio have their falling out, and let's say Escobar beats Rey to win the U.S. title, that it's LA Knight that then takes the title from Escobar. But why would your top babyface be wrestling for the U.S. title? Which is a valid question. So anyway, he'll be the top babyface until Cody Rhodes comes to SmackDown as trade compensation for the Jey Uso move. But I'm very happy for the guy. He was totally miscast because the old man couldn't see past the guy's age. He didn't see him as having top star potential, but through some good fortune last year with the Wall Street Journal stuff blowing up, all it took was Triple H taking control of creative where he got to put a lot of his initial ideas into effect. Remember, one of the first moves Triple H made when he did take the power that he did was bring back, Dakota Kai, and they put Damage Control together, right? Vince McMahon wouldn't have done that. So there were some initial ideas that Triple H was able to work in there, and one of them was to kill Max Dupree and give the guy his name back. And he started getting some semblance of a push, which he never would have gotten otherwise. And now look at him. He's the top merch seller in the company. He's getting superstar reactions everywhere he goes. His big break came later than most. But I hope he can stay healthy because this is real. This push is real. They're putting the machine behind him. And that could be a dangerous thing too, because when they started to put the machine behind John Cena, after a while, people started to resent him for it. So how they book him and how they handle him is going to be very important. That's certainly not what you want. You don't want the fans to feel like he's being shoved down their throats. We've seen how fickle the fans can be. They cheer this guy today. 3 months from now, maybe they're not. Maybe they're booing him. So they got to play their cards right here. But this is real. All he has to do is keep running with the ball, and I think 2024 should be his biggest year yet.